Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Train Crash podcast. This one, we're talking about the top 10 models we'd like to see in Ready to Run. Now, there's a couple of things we need to get out of the way first. We're both predominantly industrial / branch line modelers, so there is going to be a bias towards that. And also, some of these might not be feasible, although it's something we have thought about. We're thinking about if there's any prototypes left, or if there's any similar prototypes left. What liveries the locomotives can be sold in, because we've seen with locomotives such as the P class and the H class, the ornate pre-grouping liveries really sell very well. The same for the H2 Atlantics. But the pre-grouping, grouping, nationalisation, maybe industrial liveries are very interesting to modellers, and the more ornate liveries do tend to get people's attention, as we've mentioned, with the P class and the like. We're also looking at others that are on the market, because certain models seem to be dominating the market, and those tend to be the 060s, and it tends to be, are those useful? Would another one be more useful to the range? Maybe, maybe not. That's something we're going to discuss. And also whether it be able to share parts with other models, because we've looked recently at the Hornby B2, and the predominant amount of the work that was done on that was very similar to the work that was done on the W4, which was why it was able to be released so quickly in very little work time, is because a lot of the work was shared with what was done on the W4. So it's those sort of things that we'll be looking at first. So that's the first bit out of the way. I'll let Luke take it away with his first choice.
So my first choice is probably a little bit unusual for someone who focuses on 1960s Scottish branch line and industry. So my first choice, or what I'd love to see in Ready to Run, is a Class 185 three-car Desiro unit. So these actually run on my local line, and I've travelled on them many times. And something that we see quite often is there's a lot of modern image modelers calling out for more modern units to be recreated a model form. And I think Bachmann would take this model on really well. There aren't any that similar kind of models created. I do believe there's a 170 by Bachmann as well. I'm not sure on that. So that could be used for a bit of parts, stuff like that. But there aren't many parts you could share with it. It is limited though. It's only ever been operated by Transparent Express, though they are expected to be sold to Northern once Transparent has finished with them. But I think they've got a lot of route potential, but they're still fairly recent. I think that's probably one of its biggest drawbacks. But personally, I think I'd love to see them just because I've ridden them many times, and it would fit really nicely with Dapol's Transparent Express 68 and Accurus Scales Mark V DVT set as well. It's a bit of an unusual choice first. What would you say is one of your choices?
Oh, well, just because there's something that I think we're going to come back to, is that Transpennine Express is a beautiful livery, and I think that would encourage people to maybe buy region for them. When Hornby dropped the 800 or whatever variant in the 800 that Transpennine operate, that will be a massive livery. It's beautiful. My first choice is some sort. No, it's not. It's completely different. Staff's Railway New L class, which was a 062 locomotive. There's one preserved. It's not in running order. It's up at the Foxfield Railway in Stoke. And liveries, you could run North Staffs, LMS Black, and two of them also got sold, at least two rather, got sold into NCB usage. Now, the market is filled with 062s. There's quite a few about, actually. But there's no North Staffs prototypes modelled in Ready to Run, and I think that's a bit of a shame. Maybe that's biased because the North Staffs runs where I am now, or would run, and yeah, so maybe that's got a bit to do it. But it's an LMS prototype, and LMS prototypes do go down quite well as well, especially LMS Black sits really well. Look at the Webb coal tanks and things like that. The LMS liveries do tend to sell very well. So as I mentioned, it's an 062 tank that has pre-grouping, grouping in industrial livery potential. Industrial modelling is obviously on the rise. And there's also a real prototype that's being preserved, and obviously that helps a lot. And especially when the preserved locomotive is being worked on at the same time, it can sometimes be good for publicity. Look at the DGM 1361. If you bought one of them, £5 towards the £5 of that cost went towards the 1361 fund. which is currently preserving one. So I think that sort of thing, I was giving to charity something really useful and really nice to do, and a lot of people enjoy doing it, as they should. So yeah, it would maybe be mutually positive for both parties, the producer of the model and the actual preservationist as well, to work on this. If I'm honest, I'm not sure who'd take it. In all likelihood, it'd probably be the Bachmann or Hornby. But I do think that due to it being a North Staffs locomotive, I do think it could be relatively unlikely to be done because most of them were gone by the mid-1930s.
Yeah, as you said, industrial modelling is really on the rise. And I think that ties in quite nicely to my second choice of a prototype I'd like to see modelled, and that is the industrial Garrett. Now, these are probably these are probably the biggest industrial engines steam engines that ever really worked in the UK, and these often had 4 driving wheels each end, and they look quite similar in a way to some of the narrow gauge Garretts. I think the K1 Garretts that are on the Welsh Highland. I may be wrong there, but
I think
never
know.
Yeah, and these were just insanely strong industrial engines. So they often only really suited the more heavier, large-scale industries. So they often found homes on collieries, but again, their heavy weight and long length. I think they were articulated as well, but even though they were articulated, they still struggled around tight radius track and stuff like that. So they had the strength. They might not have had the same maneuverability that some of the small industrial engines do, but I think they just look insane. And I've seen quite a few pictures of them on going to level crossings, and they could just haul really long coal trains. So I think there is one preserved in the UK. I think it's at the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester, but I've not been able to find many details about it, unfortunately. So if you know, drop that down in the comment section below. And I think there's only one preserved, and I don't think it's an operational condition.
I don't believe it has been operational in preservation. I believe it went through a couple of rebuilds in its life, and the last one wasn't particularly brilliant. One thing I would say was operated on the Sneed Colliery, which is about, as the crow flies, about a mile from where I live at the moment. So yeah, that'd be particularly good to see from a local point of view. And yeah, I think they just emulate power. I believe there is a brass kit for it, but they're extremely hard to come by. And yeah, I think that would be like the holy grail of all industrial models.
Yeah, I could see Hornby. I really, really, really hope they take it on for the 2020 range, just as kind of a leader flagship industrial engine for their growing industrial range. But unfortunately, they haven't. So I could see Hornby taking it on, but I don't think any manufacturer will take it on anytime soon. Unfortunately, there's just a wealth of smaller industrial prototypes out there for now. You never know. Maybe Helgen will take it on because they did release the larger standard gauge. Well, it's still standard gauge. The larger kind of mainline variant of the Bear Peacock Garrett. So maybe they might take it on, but unfortunately, I don't see anyone taking it on anytime soon.
Helgen do like to produce a weird model, though, don't they? Because they've done the 15, the 16 as well, which were not around for very long. They've done the various one-offs like the Lion, the Diesel Lion. Was it called Lion? It was painted white. It looks like a Hymic, and
they did a Kestrel as well.
Falcon, Kestrel, yeah, exactly. So if it is out of any of the manufacturers, I probably would say it's Helgen. So yeah, I think that would make a very interesting model. And it does kind of tie on to my next one. This is where the industrial bits really kick in. I'd quite like to see a Peckett X2 class. Now, there is one being preserved. Ironically, again, at the Foxfield, it's almost like it's my local line. But no, it's currently in the early stages of being restored there. Liveries, a lot went into NCB usage. I believe a couple went to Steelworks, various different things. So you could also sell it in the Peckett's Work livery as well, which the leaf green, a lovely little livery. The market for it, you've got things like obviously the B2. So we're looking at 060 tank engines here. Panniers, both of them Bachmann and the new Rapido ones. Ginties, loads of other little 060s. But I think this is a part is because, number one, it's a explicitly industrial design. So many collieries had them. But also because it's an inside cylinder packet, which we've not seen in Ready to Run. And they're obviously used in industry. As mentioned, it's a preserved locomotive, and they do sell quite well normally. The Survivor X2, as I mentioned, is currently being restored. And many of the class did get rebuilt, so there's lots of tooling differences, which people like to collect the various different tooling differences for locomotive. And these were fitted with the flared fronts on them, which packet locomotives often had. Some of them had them removed. I believe a couple of them had new cabs fitted as well, or at least new bunkers. And yeah, it would really add like a third member of the family to the Hornby packet family, which they've obviously been working on quite a bit. And I think that would be particularly useful to them. People like collecting families locomotives, and another 060 in around the £100 mark. People aren't going to complain at that. If it's anything like the W4 or the B2, it'll be an exquisite model, and I genuinely think it would finish off quite nicely the locomotives.
Yeah, and I imagine they could share a lot of toolings as well, as did the W4 and B2. They could have the X2 class sharing tooling with it as well. So, whilst we're on the kind of the region of shared toolings, I'd really like to see an 88 DS Ruston. Now, Hornby have produced a 48 DS Ruston, and I did kind of think they might release an 88 DS Ruston as part of their 2020 range as a bit of a sequel. And I did also. We were both hoping that. We both have got Rustons. We both love them. They're fantastic models. Hornby have really, really done a good job with them. And once you've got one, you probably want another one. So they'd be able to share a lot of toolings as well. I don't know the exact variations with the 88DS, but I think it had a slightly longer wheelbase, and it was a slightly larger engine, more horsepower. So it would suit a range of industrial kind of focuses, though prototypically it would probably be used on the smaller lines. Again, I struggled to find information on these, unfortunately. I believe there is one preserved but in non-operational condition at Peak Rail. So they could make a site visit to collect the various bits and bobs they've been missing. But given that's a diesel built later on in the 50s and 60s, I think, that there probably are better collections of engineering drawings of these if they're trying to recreate one in model form. And they've already got the kind of the mechanism developed in the 48 DS Ruston, and kind of the runner wagon sourced out. So I think it would be a really nice kind of sequel. And again, I'd love to pick one up. I really like the look of the 48 DS Ruston. And it'd also be a way to expand the industrial diesel market, because we've kind of seen more of a steam focus. So you've got the B2s, the W4s, the Andrew Barclays. I guess you could throw in a Hornby Lancashire Yorkshire Pug in there as well. But on the diesel front, you've more got the 4WD Sentinel and the 48 DS Ruston. And that's pretty much it. I guess you could say an 08 or an 03 or an 04 could fit into that category, but they were predominantly used in British Rail shunting yards. So yeah, I think it would have a lot of potential, and considering how quickly the Ruston sold out, especially in that light green works green livery, because I know you wanted to get one, but they completely sold out, and they sold out everywhere. I got mine by luck. I was going into the shop and my local model shop and asking if they had any, and they had two in stock, and I got the penultimate one. So I think that again would be incredibly popular, and also it would just suit so many different liveries. Something that we often discuss is how nice it is that models could come in specific liveries, but how nice it would be if they'd also come in more ambiguous, just generic colours. So I know I picked my Peckett up, and one of the big factors that led to that was just because it was just in a plain black livery, and so it wasn't branded with Huntley and Palmer's or some cement factory. It was just kind of bland, I guess. It could fit into the setting really easily. So that definitely one of my top models I'd like to see in RTR.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, is that sometimes we would like to see just some slightly quote unquote bland deliveries that you can do more with regards to fitting transfers and the like. And works liveries, as you mentioned, tended to be very ornate. We've already mentioned the Peckett leaf green, obviously the Ruston green is a really nice one. I'm not jealous at all that you have it, but then I've got the one with hazard stripe, so it's
Making me
twos and
jealous
fro's.
there.
Yeah, well, you'll end up with one of them eventually. But yeah, a model that I'd like to come on to now, another industrial one, would you believe, is the Hudswell Clark 24-ton tanks. None of these have been preserved. However, one manufacturer was going to do it. Unfortunately, it's the bygone now. DJM manufacturer. They were going to produce them. In fact, I nearly placed a pre-order, but my mind got persuaded otherwise. And yeah, I'm glad I didn't, because obviously I wouldn't have got my money back. But so it suggests that there was some research into it, and there's clearly enough of people interested in these that DJM would sell them, which I think is an interesting touch. So liveries, industrial, all sorts of liveries, and you can also get away with somewhat fictional liveries as well, and with industrial prototypes, if you just have a generic green, a generic red, or whatever. I believe Hudswell Clark also had a works livery, which would be good to see them in. Marketplace is very much the same as the X2, really. The B2, panniers, ginties, whatever, really. An 060 tank engine, you are very well looked after, especially with the J50s and that. Now, as I've kind of talked about before, 060s are very popular, and these could be too. Though they lack pre-grouping and grouping and nationalisation appeal, they could be fictional. Thing with a lot of reservation, although none of this exact class do. They did get put into fictional BR liveries, and I think that's a good little thing that maybe manufacturers do, maybe. And something else I've mentioned is that though none are preserved, many Hudswell Clark locomotives and their various designs have been preserved. So even if line drawings aren't that good or technical drawings aren't that good, you could create quite a good model just from the ones that are preserved. And Hudswell Clark, as with a lot of industrial manufacturers, used similar part, if not the same part, on every locomotive. Obviously, it cuts down on maintenance costs for the consumer, and also, as the manufacturer, cuts down on the amount of parts you have to design and make. So, as I mentioned, similar locomotives are in preservation, so it can be used to base the design, but it also means you could get away with doing a couple of Hudswell Clark locomotives, because Hudswell Clark were a big locomotive producer. I believe they were based in Leeds. So yeah, you could get away with doing a lot of the 040s, 060s, and the multitude of different designs, body shapes that this manufacturer rather, would create. And if we are thinking about manufacturers for this, I'd probably say it's got to be a Hornby job, or maybe a way of Bachmann dipping their toes into the industrial scene.
Yeah, I think those 24-ton tanks have been made in O gauge by Ixion.
They have, yes.
So they could potentially share or buy, drawings or the research that they conducted, and the tooling maybe as well, because once they do the CAD models, that can just be resized to suit and fit the other mechanisms. So it could maybe be a fairly easier project. But it's an interesting point you made about Bachmann dipping their toe into the industrial market, because as far as they've done, they've only really released an industrial NCB 03 or 04, I can't remember which one.
It's
so
03, I believe.
Yeah, I think you were looking at that a while ago.
Yeah, but they're very expensive. For a model that's
they are very expensive. Yeah, but that goes in line with all the Bachmann models. So maybe it would be good to see them venturing into the industrial market as they're venturing into the 009 market. That'd be something to watch out in the future for. So I also like a Hudswell Clark. Now, these are one of the 040 contractor locos. So I do believe that these are produced as a kit form from Hardy's Hobbies that run on a Peckett chassis. The kit's kit's £45 plus a bit of post, I think. And from what I've heard, that they're fantastic kits and they run on a really smooth chassis. But if you were to price up a Peckett and that kit, it'd probably put you around to £120, £130. And I could see Hornby producing these, for £90, similar price to the Peckett. So again, it's got quite a short wheelbase, so mechanism and those kind of stuff they've worked out, because Hornby have really cracked a smooth running, compact, small mechanism that's reliable over the points and over time as well. So they've got a lot of that stuff already for them. They've realised the potential of the industrial market as well. I know people that have not even have don't even model industry, and they've still picked up a Peckett or a Rusted or something like that, just because it looks nice and it's something a bit different. And I think this loco really has that. It captures quite a unique kind of saddle tank design. It looked incredibly elegant as well. Kind of got the Victorian kind of flavors coming through with the prototypes that have open cabs, unique shaped chimneys, and they lasted a long time as well. I think they were predominantly used on ironstone railways, but I think a few slipped into colliery and other industrial uses as well. So I think that's got a huge amount of potential, and it would build on the already fantastic industrial range that Hornby's got, and a steam loco as well. The Pecketts, they were sold out, and they're now 4 years old, and they're still selling out. And I think the charm of a small steam loco probably has got more charm over the a diesel loco, so maybe more potential for the manufacturers to look in to. But if Hornby released that, I think it would have to be a Hornby model in the near future, it would definitely get my purchase from them.
Yeah, I think it's particularly interesting that you mentioned the likes of Hornby getting those small running mechanisms down, because I'm not sure if anybody remembers when the Sentinels were released. That was the first modern ready-to-run model that I was really interested in. And I remember reading in the press and on people's YouTube channels and whatever, people going, look how small it is, look how small it is. And then now they're releasing things like the Ruston, which is even smaller. And you've still got quite archaic models kicking about that obviously could be renovated. Things like the Bachmann 03 is a very decent model, but the 04 they haven't released in donkey's years. Could share a running gear, but they've not done it. So I think it's interesting in that sense that Hornby do appear to be leading the range when it comes to small mechanisms. And I've mentioned it actually. One of my other locomotives I'd like to see is a 060 Sentinel. Now, I was quite disappointed that Hornby didn't have this in their 2020 range, because the Sentinels, again, still sell very well. But 060 ones are just bigger and quite cool. They did do an 0801, but I think that'd be ridiculous to expect a manufacturer to produce one of them. Mainly because they are limited use. I believe the Longbourn Military Railway had one, and I believe a couple of ironworks did, although one of those has been preserved. However, the 060 variant, multiple have been preserved, and I believe there's still a couple that run on cement works. So liveries, obviously, you've got the industrial liveries that we've previously mentioned that could just be generic liveries, but you've also got the specific ones like the Port of Bristol and the very cement liveries that they exist in. Now, market-wise, obviously, there's quite a few 060 diesel shunters. The 03s, 04s, 05s, 07, 08, 09s are all about, but there's no real industrial 060 diesel locomotive, and I think that's a little bit disappointing, especially for the industrial modelers. Though a lot of those did get sold off into industrial usage. Halogen are working on a Ruston that's a 060 that was used by the Western Regions track department. This would be another nice little locomotive to have, and Sentinel locomotives are fascinating to look at. I've forgotten who it was when they were first reviewing them, described them as looking a little bit like a warthog, which I think is quite nice. It's not that nice to them, but I think it's very true, and they are very interesting locomotives to look at. And the 0401 sells very well. That stands to reason with things like the B2 and the W4 Pecketts, maybe an 060 would. So, as the four-wheeled Sentinels I've already mentioned are already produced, parts could be shared between them. And obviously the running gear could be very similar. You just kind of have to do a little bit more research to create the 060. And yeah, I think it would be a good selling model. Certainly one that I'd buy, because it's interesting that the 50s dieselisation of the industrial scene from the 50s onwards is fascinating. The fact that these variations that exist, such as square buffers, the circular buffers, various different things like that. I believe a couple have had rebuilt cabs at some point. So I think it'd be an interesting model to obviously manufacture. And also you could manufacture the different detail differences. And as I mentioned earlier, people enjoy collecting the families of locomotives. And lots of people have the 040 Sentinels, much for the same reason that they have the Ruston and the Pecketts, because it's nice, and they are really nice little models. I'm particularly fond of mine. I know that you're currently working on ways to fit Stay Alive to your 0401, but can you imagine fitting Stay Alive to an 0601? There'd be just so much more room and you could do it.
Yeah. It doesn't even need Stay Alive. I'm also looking at repainting mine as well, but I think one of the key things that the Sentinel has potential is for is the continuity of liveries. Now, as you said, people like to collect families of manufacturers and classes. I think there's definitely a market of people that like to collect ornate liveries or just groups of liveries. Because if you've got one Port of Bristol livered Sentinel, I know an 060 Sentinel was also put into Port of Bristol, so maybe they'd be interested in getting the 06 version as well. Or maybe even for a bit of fun, they might put one to Huntley and Palmer's livery, because that was crazy sold out, and still does to this day. And so, being able to continue those liveries as the people that have justified the livery once may be able to justify it again for the same reasons for their railways. So whilst we're kind of on the topic of liveries, one thing that I think really draws people into buying models is the livery, and a loco with nice lining or a bold colour maybe. Because if you look at the Hornby H class, the Hatton's P class, the ones that are painted in the SECR livery, the Southeast Coast, Southeast Chatham.
Southeast and Chatham Railway, I believe it is.
I was pretty close. That'll do for now. It's southern, not my area of expertise, but this is leading to somewhere a bit more Scottish. And those liveries were incredibly popular. A big reason why a lot of people bought them was because the livery was just so beautiful and ornate, and just something different as well. Because a lot of British rail liveries are quite, single tone with one colour lining and then the BR crest. That's it basically. Nothing that exciting. But the reason why the H class had so much potential is because it had so many different liveries and had those ornate liveries that could also be sold as collector club editions. But what I'm trying to get onto is not that we need more SECR locos, but the fact that we need some more Scottish branch line locos. So in a similar way to the H class, which is an 044 tank, the Caledonian Railway 2P class was also an 044, and I've seen that people can convert then the M7s, which is a southern design, to these. But these, well, the reason I'm saying is because these appeared initially in the quite a beautiful Caledonian Railway blue and lines livery, and there's the one of these is preserved, I think at the Bonessing Canal Railway in Scotland, and it just draws so many visitors in, especially when they do Caledonian Railway galas. And I think Bachman repainted a 4MT tank or a Fairburn tank into Caledonian Railway livery a couple of years back, and it sold incredibly quickly. So this is a livery that is rarely seen, and is rarely done well as well. Because I know the Hornby Railroad range offers an 040 Caledonian Railway pug, but again, that doesn't really capture the ornate look of this livery. It's also got potential to be carried through to British Rail liveries, which is probably the version I'd buy, just because it'd be more prototypical. But the fact that they can host galas with just Caledonian Railway engines kind of shows the potential that this livery in particular, but also this loco has got. It's got to be produced as a model, and the amount that they might actually sell. But they also, it kind of is, Scottish branch lines are vastly unsupported by Ready to Run, so this would be a way of maybe making Scottish modelling more attractive. But also, once you release a loco, they might need some coaches to go with them. They've got Caledonian wooden-bodied, wooden chassis coaches, which are also incredibly beautiful, and I imagine would sell out very quickly, especially if Hornby did, a reasonable price of say £40 for one. So yeah,
I think that's all you need to do is look at, as you mentioned, the galas that locomotive that has been preserved creates. I mean, I remember the buzz around the Tunic Valley at the time when the Tunic Valley was the first railway visited south of the border since about 1973 or 76 or something like that. And the buzz around it, I remember wandering down at the time, chuck a couple of quid in the collection box because I was round at my dad's. But the event they had on there, you were talking to people on the platform, and there's people from all over the country that had come up across and down
Mm.
to see this locomotive. And yeah, it looked brilliant when it ran through the station. And yeah, it looked particularly nice on the demonstration freights they did with it as well. And yeah, I feel like Caledonia Railway is such an important railway to Scotland and to the LMS and the like that is kind of underrepresented. I believe the jumbos being done by Bachmann in conjunction with rails.
They are, but I think they're about 190, 200 pounds for the Caledonian livery. They're making people pay a premium price for the more ornate livery.
Mm-hmm. Which, let's face it, Bachmann have done with the C class as well, again in the SECR livery. And I think, yeah, pre-grouping liveries just are pretty, aren't they? And for a lot of modelers who aren't that interested in region and just enjoy watching trains run, the nicer liveries attract them. And maybe those sort of modelers, including the cabinet modelers who just put models in cabinets, can support the locomotives to be produced in BR liveries and things like that.
And it's also a preserved engine as well. And as we said earlier, people love buying preserved engines. And as you said, the amount of people that are attracted to galas to see it and in the flesh would probably appreciate a model form of it as well. And it would be a great way to add the Scottish collection of very models. So I don't think there's a Scottish branch line engine that's being produced ready to run that is that small. And it would, attract and draw more attention to maybe LMS designs later on. And there's so potential of Scottish prototypes we could dive into, but unfortunately we haven't got the time ready to go through them all.
But if you got for hours,
we could, and I'm sure maybe one day we'll do a podcast that we won't really. I wouldn't put you through that. So have you got any models you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's kind of running on that theme of LMS, where this was a middle locomotive passed into LMS and then BR ownership, and that's the Midland 2F. Now, none of these have been preserved. Plenty of pictures of them now. And as you can see on the screen, it looks like somebody's run off with most of the boiler from a 3F. Now, obviously, they're Johnson designs in the Midland days, and they were carrying on being developed in the LMS days. Now, market for this sort of locomotive, obviously in the Midland region, 060 tender engines, we've got the 3Fs and 4Fs, which you can see the family resemblance with. And a similar sort of locomotive from another region is kind of like the LNER G15, like a small 060 tender engine. Now, obviously, showing the Johnson cab with the 3Fs and 4Fs, it looks like a smaller 3F, as I've mentioned, which is because actually they were effectively, I believe they were prime design. A bigger boiler got fitted at a later date. And there was some variety in the class. Some of them had various different rebuilds over the lives and things like that, which could be modelled. Again, people enjoy collecting all the different variants. And if I'm honest, it feels like a bit of a missing link in that 3F, 4F sort of. And obviously, if you've got the casting for the 3F cab, which both Hornby and Bachmann, 4F Hornby have got, Bachmann have got both 3F and 4F. In theory, you just kind of need another boiler, which was a Midland standard design boiler, and you'd kind of be away you'd go because a lot of the tendons were shared between models as well. And yeah, people enjoy collecting LMS locomotives, as I mentioned, and you could get away with doing some of the Midland liveries as well. Granted, they were black, but they had such ornate crests on the side of the tendons. I really think it would be a nice little model to have. And people like the J15. The J15 is a cute little engine because of how small it is compared to other 060s. And I think this is like the Midland equivalent. And small little locomotives sell well. Cute little engines do. And I think it would be brilliant for so many people who run branch lines and things like that. Though it might miss the kind of like bright colours that, say, the P-Class or the Caledonian engine we've previously discussed and various different other locomotives that have been mentioned. It's a really nice, like, typical model, if you get me, and I can imagine some people weathering them down really well. There's some brilliant pictures online of them. And yeah, I just think it's a shame that they've not been modelled yet. And I think it makes sense to model them, because I think there is a big market for small 060s.
Yeah, there definitely is. And, the Hornby J36 and the J15 are all testament to that as well. So as we kind of bring this podcast to a close, let us know in the comment section down below what locos would you like to see in Ready to Run. But if you're also interested in adding to your own collection a unique set of rolling stock or details, we've just launched our own model kit range in double low gauge. So this includes details like loco toolboxes, dump buffers, which are great for converting locos, just look that little bit more industrial, and also a shoulder and wagon kit, which is a very unique wagon to collieries for other industrial applications. So if you want to check that out, we'll be having kits on sale from the 1st of June. So go check us out on eBay at Train Crash Models. That I might put the link to our eBay store in this description below once we've got everything set up there and launched. So if you'd like to get your hands on those, that'd be great. It's a great way to support the channel and also a great way to add unique locos that aren't available ready to run to your collection. We're also running a diorama competition. Now this closes on the 20th of May, which I'm aware is probably 1 or 2 days after this podcast is released. But that's just to let you know that if you would like to get an entry in and you're worried that you might miss the deadline, we can extend the deadline for you, don't worry. If not, then, well, you can feel free to enter anyway, and we'd love to feature in another video. So that's happening as well. So also we'll be streaming every Monday as well as we build up hype for the release of our kits and products. So if you want to see more behind the scenes stuff like that, then stay tuned to that. And also, subscribe, like, whatever you want to do. And thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in the next podcast. All right, bye.
Peace.